nice.
Hey guys, welcome to Horology Biology. So today on the bench, I have got a vintage Omega Geneve, reference number 166.0168. It has the caliber 1012 inside, which is not the easiest movement to work on, I ain't gonna lie. So without further ado, I'm gonna strip this watch down, run it through the clean machine, rebuild it, oil it, regulate it, and I'm gonna give some super special, super fresh, super nice attention to the case in question. Let's get on with it. Hey guys, welcome to the channel. If you're new, I'm super happy that you're here. Great for finding me, and hopefully you're going to find some super nice, super fresh watch content. Also, big thanks to returning subscribers, of course, as always, checking out the HP stuff. And hopefully you're going to enjoy this super nice Omega that's on show right about now. So the guy that owns this watch, I actually know him quite well now. He's come around to my place a couple of times and he brought this watch, and it has a nice little story behind it. He is actually the first owner of this watch, and it was bought to him as a present in his early 20s by his parents from the dealership, and he's the original owner from new, complete with all his man cheese, as you can see. Yeah. First thing about this watch which surprised me was, which you guys are probably gonna go, huh? But hey, HB, you're saying that it's all original and everything. The bracelet is a Tissot bracelet, and I questioned that as soon as I saw it. Now he turned around to me and he said it was his mom apparently that chose it from the dealer, and they basically said this would look really good on the watch, etc. I was also a bit surprised by this, but then maybe back in those days with Tissot being kind of like an underdog with a relationship to Omega, similar to how you have Tudor to Rolex, it's pretty plausible, I suppose, that it could be the case. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do things a little bit different. So I'm going to actually give some attention to this case because it's a little bit beaten up. I don't want to polish it as in like over polish it. Because it's a brushed case, I just want to bring some of that brushing back to it. Now there's a few ways that you can do this, and one of the ways that I was shown how to do it, I'm going to show it later on in the video. It's a very subtle method. It doesn't take a lot of time and it can produce really nice results without removing all of the original deeper characteristics of the watch, which is certainly not something that I wanted to do. I just wanted to brush it up a bit and make it look a lot more presentable than it actually did at the moment. So as you can see, it obviously needs a serious clean because there's a hell of a lot of man cheese on there. Talking like a good 50 odd years of man sweat building up, and it needs to be removed. And no, I did not wear my hazmat suit because I know the guy, so I kind of trust him. So I'm basically just going to remove the watch from the case, as you can see, and then I can basically stick this to one side. But guys, look at that dial. You've got this really nice classic 70s looking brown chocolate sunburst dial, and it's in really nice condition. The crystal is also fully original as well, so that's also something that I'm going to take care of later on. Now what you can see that I'm doing here is, and this is something I advise you guys to do as well, if you do have to remove like a little thin bezel that goes around the crystal, don't use a case knife, quite simply because it's too thick. Use a razor blade, that's what I do, because you're going to minimize putting any kind of denting into the metal. So I basically just pop a very, very thin, very sharp razor blade in there, and then I tap it with my hammer so that I can get it in, and then if I just maneuver it a little bit, I will get it off free without causing any damage. And as you can see when it's off, there's a lot of grime under there, and it actually makes you think, how the hell does it get under there? Because it's caked, it really is caked. So obviously that's going to get ultrasonically cleaned, and it's going to get some super attention to it. So I'm removing the crystal as well because that needs to be sanded down. It needs to be basically brought back up to speed. I checked it, it's got the Omega logo right in the middle, and it's really cool as well because the logo is imprinted from the inside and I'm going to be sanding it from the outside. So obviously when I sand it back and I make it look, you know, really good, we're not going to remove the Omega logo from the center. If it wasn't an original Omega crystal, then I would have basically chucked it and I would have just replaced it with a new one. But as it is an original, we want to keep it original because, well, why would we not? So all the parts have gone into the ultrasonic cleaning for the case, and I've removed all the cheese, then I've given it another clean as well. Everything's been dried off, and now I'm going to just apply a brushing technique. And the simplest way that you can do this is by using Scotch pads. Scotch pads Now, you can buy the expensive ones, or you can quite simply buy the ones that you can get from a supermarket. This is a supermarket one. It basically will put on the brushing back onto the case without basically removing all of the deeper scratches, which is not what I wanted to do. I wanted to put the brushing back on, but I wanted to maintain those characteristics of the history of the watch, because there's nothing worse than a vintage watch that's basically had every single mark removed from it, because as far as I'm concerned, when you do that, you're basically removing all of the history. So this is something that's very light, as long as you do it right, and the key with it is that you basically keep going in a straight line in one direction.
If you're enjoying this super fresh, super nice video, I know I am, then please hit a like on this and feel free to drop a comment below. You can also subscribe to the Horology Biology channel. Make sure to check the bell icon if you do. This way you'll be notified when all the next super fresh, super nice HB goodness will be available.
So for the case back, I'm doing it a little bit different. So I am using a 1200 grit sandpaper, simply going in a very straight line, and these are the results that you get. Looks a hell of a lot better than it did. Still got the original deep scratches, but it's put that brushing back on it, and in my opinion, it looks damn nice. So for the bezel ring, I am using these Bergeron polishing sticks. They've got 3 different grits on there. They're all very, very fine. And I basically give it all a once over. And the results, as far as I'm concerned, look really, really nice. So as I mentioned earlier, for the crystal, it's going to get the restoration treatment, breaking it down through various grits of sandpaper, 360 to 800, then 1000, and then 1200, finishing off with some polywatch and buffing it all up. And I was really happy with how it looked in the end. There was no deep cracks on it, so I got all the initial scratches out, and it buffed up really nice. And of course, the logo is still present, and that's the most important thing. So now the case is completely out of the way, we can get down to the full strip down of the watch. First, I'm going to remove the hands. As I've mentioned a million times before, make sure that you guys always cover your dial with plastic, because you do not want to scratch it. Even though the Presto tools have got plastic bottoms on them, I just don't trust them. As far as I'm concerned, I want to use maximum protection, because you never know that you could get in a sticky spot and you want to protect that dial, especially when it doesn't belong to you. And this is a really nice dial. I mean, look at it. It's like a galaxy chocolate bar. Mars all the way. So once the dial's off, I'm just going to pop that into a safe place, and now I can continue to break down the movement. So first what I'm doing is I'm removing this plate, which is covering all of the keyless works, all of the date wheel mechanisms, etc. Just keeps everything in place, and I actually like the concept of it, even though one of the date changing wheels was stuck to the top of it. So that's also an indication of old oil. Now the owner of this watch, he says that it's never been serviced before, and when I saw him and I looked at it, I was also in agreement with that. Now what he doesn't know is, what I did actually see, there was a actual inscription in the back of the case back which was not original to Omega, and what I mean by that is it's a watchmaker's mark. So I do now actually think that someone has serviced it along the way, because it does have an engraving mark in there. Watchmakers used to do that back in the day. They would actually put their own set of code. They would have a code number which referenced to them, and they would inscribe it in the back of the case back. People, as far as I'm aware, they don't do it anymore. It's not something I do anyway. But there is one present inside this watch. So I'm just going to remove the balance. So this runs at 2800 beats per hour, which is, it's not technically high beat, but it's pretty fast, obviously. So it has a much shorter, tighter balance spring, which I actually really like, because they're not as, basically they don't hang as low. And they're easier to manage when you're moving it around. But there were things with this watch, this caliber 1012 that I didn't like. And one thing that I discovered, and I didn't notice until I was looking at it, oh man, it has one of those cannon pinions that's on the third wheel. So it doesn't have the traditional cannon pinion in the center. It actually has it on one of the train wheels. And I don't like them, I'll be honest with you. I really don't like them. I find them more fiddly. They're absolutely tiny as well. And if there's a problem with it, yeah, then yeah, it can be problematic. Luckily, it wasn't too problematic, but I was a little disappointed when I first saw it and I thought, oh hell, I've got to basically remove this because they're friction fit like a normal cannon pinion, but basically around a third of the size of a normal cannon pinion. You'll see later on. So I've just removed the automatic works and I've just put those to one side and I'm removing any power that was left in the watch. The watch wasn't running amazing. It had very low amplitude and you could, I don't know if you saw that then, but when I was letting the tension out of the watch, I didn't really even have to hold on the crown that much because it was winding down so slowly because it's just gunked obviously with dried grease. So off comes the pallet bridge and the pallet forks. And again, you could see that the pallet forks were stuck inside the jewel of the bridge. Another indication of old oil that's gunked up and it's got dirt in it and it starts to basically congeal and stick together, which causes a lot of friction in your watch, which is obviously going to result in low amplitude and make it not run great. So just removing the click and the click spring. There's a really small click spring on this 1012, so you have to be careful that it's not going to fly away. Just use a piece of plastic or a piece of pegwood just to secure it from flying across the room because, yeah, something this small, you're probably never going to see it again and then you have to buy a new one and that's also a pain in the ass. So just removing the crown wheels. Now there's 3 on this watch and the third one, the one that I haven't unscrewed, another strange thing which I'm not going to use the word problematic, but just difficult. This is like a difficult watch because you can't unscrew it. Basically, it has like a washer underneath it and you have to support that so that you can unscrew it from the top, otherwise it's just going to spin. Again, why they've done it like this, I'm not too sure. It's obviously every company and every movement is different, but I must admit there were things on this movement that I didn't enjoy. For example, the cannon pinion on the third wheel, and of course that third crown wheel with the screw that you have to unscrew from the top side while securing it from the barrel bridge. Very frustrating and just unnecessary time consuming. The movement also has a hack, so there you go, and it's actually in plastic as well. So just removing the trainer wheels. So off goes the escape wheel, and then you can see that third wheel, and I'm not removing it because I cannot remove it because the cannon pinion is on the other side. So I need to basically remove that later on. So now I can remove the barrel bridge. And that's the part that I'm talking about underneath. You see that little square? That's the part that I need to secure so that I can basically unscrew it from the top. Just putting the mainspring barrel to one side. Also removing the little friction spring underneath. And now I've turned the watch to the other side and I can basically break down the keyless works. So removing the setting lever spring. And there's a date changing wheel under there as well. There's also the yoke, the winding pinion and the sliding pinion. All of these things are going to get removed and cleaned. And I know it's January and I shouldn't moan, but I have been used to of late the not so cold weather. The last 2 days, man, it's got super chilly in my room here. Oh, I've got a blanket over me and everything. Because these electricity costs, I'm pretty sure it's the same for everybody else out there, but it's damn expensive at the minute. And I'm being a bit tight and I don't want to pay for it basically. So I'm wrapped up in a blanket, trying to keep warm that way because prices are just absolutely insane at the moment. Insane. So this watch is pretty much stripped down now. And then the only thing that I need to do is break down the automatic works, get that old mainspring out. I'm going to put a new mainspring into this watch anyway. It deserves it, definitely, considering it's the original one, no doubt. And then what I'm doing is to remove the cannon pinion. I was looking at the best way to do this because it's the first time I've done it. So I've gone from the top because I couldn't get in with my special Presto tools for these wheels. Excuse me. And I've removed it from the wheel side. So I'm just securing it now on this block so that it doesn't move underneath, and now I can unscrew it and just take off the other crown wheel. There's a little copper washer underneath as well. So now breaking down the automatic works. I really like the automatic works on this module, I'm not gonna lie. I think it functions really well. It's quite simple to disassemble and reassemble. It's pretty straightforward. It's got a reversing wheel in there, and you'll see when I pop it off, there's 4 wheels in total, and it just goes together very snug. A lot better than the Enica ones, I'll be honest. I prefer it, and the build quality as well is really, really good. So the other thing what I do as well is I peg all of these jewels out from these parts, and I also spend care and attention to each wheel under the microscope. I don't bore you guys with that because it takes me a decent amount of time, but I basically want to make sure that things are in a good condition, not too worn. You want to basically be checking the pivot ends, making sure that they're not mushroomed out or heavily worn. And also you want to make sure that there's not too much dirt on there, because your cleaning machine is not going to get rid of that, so you need to do it manually. You're looking for a really nice trace on your Timergrapher at the end. Basically you want it to be looking for straight lines with no deviations, so that there's no big indications of dirt. So all the parts have been basically given a pegging treatment, getting all those jewel holes, and I'm basically just loading everything up into the basket for the cleaning machine. So guys, if you're liking this video, please hit a like on this. It will really help the YouTube algorithm. You can also leave a comment if you wish, and by all means feel free to subscribe to the Horology Biology channel. It definitely will help this channel grow, and definitely will encourage me to produce more videos moving forward. So I basically oiled the inside wall of the barrel, so put in some chrono grease. I've popped in a new mainspring, and I'm just popping in the arbor as well into this now, and then I can basically close it all with a lid with this tool that you can see on the video. A little bit of 1300 on the top of the arbor as well, so just a tiny bit of lubrication. And then just put it on the barrel lid, and then I can close it so that it fits snugly with the top of this mainspring press, and it just clicks on. So next I want to tackle the capstones. Some people do this at the end, some people remove these before they put them in the wash. I prefer to clean them manually, and the way that I do it is it goes in the wash anyway, so things are being cleaned from the outside perspective. And then what I do is I basically split them in half. So I remove the capstone, and then the bottom part of it, I give it a little treatment in one dip. The top capstone gets treatment, it gets cleaned off any excess grease, and then it basically gets some fixer drop treatment. and then I can just apply a little bit of 90-10 oil to the top of it. You want to basically fill around 60 to 70% of the circle circumference, no more than that, and then you basically put it back together and pop it back in the watch. It can be fiddly when you've never done it before. I'm really used to it now, obviously, but I remember when I first was doing it, it was like, oh man, these things are so small, like, or if you ping it across the room, good luck, you're never going to find it. So you do have to be careful because they are pretty much one of the smallest things that you need to deal with on a watch. They are really small and they can be quite slippy and jumpy. And you're never going to find it with a magnet because they're not metal, so good luck with that as well. So once I've done those, obviously there's one on the top and one on the bottom. I want to basically remove the balance and put this to one side until we use it later on. So I'm just oiling up the areas where I'm going to be putting certain parts, like so where the barrel's going to go, where the setting lever spring is going to go, sorry, where the setting lever is going to go, setting lever screw, and then also the center wheel, etc. Some people do it exactly when they are putting in that part. I kind of do it at the beginning, so I know I'm going to put these parts in a certain order, so I think, well, my oiler's out, so I may as well do it now, etc. You have to be really careful with this as well, not to bend it. You bend it and you're in for a big problem because it is a very, very delicate piece. There's also a little friction spring as well, which holds it central and stops it moving around, obviously. I believe that's made out of a thin piece of copper or brass. So once that's done, I can basically now build up the trainer wheels, so putting in the escape wheel and all the other wheels. And of course I can put in that third wheel as well. I will add the cannon pinion to it later on once that I've got the trainer wheel bridge on, and then I can just pop that on from the other side and tap it into place. But I really do like the color of these vintage Omega movements. The 1010s, the 1012s, they do look really, really nice. I mean, that beautiful goldy, like a light goldy kind of color. Different to the Enicas, obviously. And I know when I've been asked this before, if I had to choose, do I prefer working on Enicas or do I prefer working on Omegas? I must admit, I really do like the Omegas. The quality is better. I am not gonna lie about that. Even though I'm a big Enica guy, and you all know that, I must admit, if I had to choose, like, okay, you can only work on this one forever. Well, okay, let me think about that. If I could only ever work on one movement forever, then it would have to be the Valjoux 72. That's a given. So just lining up the trainer wheels bridge, making sure that all of the pivots line up into the jewels before it's all screwed down. Oh, and one thing I did get recently, I went to a watch expo, first one of the year, so I went there, when was that, a couple of weeks ago, and I picked up a new staking block set as well. I've been after a new one for a while. My other one was obviously old, but some of the stakes, there were a couple on there which were a little bit too used and they were a little bit damaged. So I saw a new old stock set, and the price was pretty good. It wasn't too expensive, so I decided to go for it, and I'm happy with it. It's really, really nice. Swiss made, of course, and with it being new old stock, the condition of it was just perfect. All perfect stakes, mint condition, and yeah, that will definitely last me a lifetime. So now I need to decide, what am I going to do with the other staking set? Maybe I will sell it, maybe I will give it away. I'm not sure yet. I will have to think about it, because they're not cheap. That's the other thing with these things. And I think somebody also mentioned this to me once, like they said, a lot of people got into different hobbies. So like with the whole pandemic that happened, a lot of people were getting into watchmaking as well, I read. And I'm wondering if that's also something that's made the prices of secondhand tools go up. But then I had a conversation with somebody else, and they also said you might find that a lot of tools might start coming back onto the market because people obviously have got back to normal now and they're busy again. And yeah, a lot of people get into things and then they realize, oh, it's not for me, and then they basically sell everything. So if people are looking for tools, you never know, in the not so distant future, things might actually start coming online for a bit cheaper than what they originally were. So just putting on the barrel bridge, just lining it up over the top of the arbor and then just click it in. The other thing as well with the barrel bridge, it actually has two like little feet on it, so you can actually fit it on without and having it correctly aligned before you screw it in place, which is quite handy. It's quite a nice thing to have on that movement. So it's held in with the two screws, and then I can work on these crown wheels, just adding a little bit of 1300 to the posts. One of them has a little washer on there as well, the middle one. Also adding the click spring as well, just pushing that in place with some pegwood so it doesn't fly across the room. And then I can add the click, and obviously I can screw that down as well. So just popping the ratchet wheel on as well, and look at the size of it, guys. This ratchet wheel is massive when you think about it. I mean, that's huge. I mean, maybe it's slightly unnecessarily huge, but that's a damn big ratchet wheel. And I wanted to say thanks as well. Thank you for the comments that I received on the Bob Ross video. That was a lot of fun. I know one guy messaged and he was saying, oh yeah, you should do it again. And I'm thinking, I don't know, man, that wig was like super itchy and it drove me insane. Seriously, I couldn't wait to get it off of my head. And the most embarrassing thing about that thing was, after I did the video, I had to rush out to the supermarket before it closed. And what I didn't realize was that people were giving me some funny looks. And I was thinking, okay, why are they giving me funny looks? And before you start, yes, I did remember to take the wig off, don't worry. The problem was, when I got home, and I went to the loo, and I realized that across my forehead, I had a massive big line where the wig had been, like embossed into my forehead. So it had looked like I'd had like a lobotomy or something in my time. So no wonder people were giving me weird looks. It was really, really obvious. And it was super embarrassing and not super fresh. No, sir, it was not. So just reinstalling those crown wheels. No reverse threaded screws on these. They're all screwed back on in the normal fashion. And you just want to nip those back in place. Make sure they're tight. They don't have to be overly tight, but you want to make sure that they're free as well. So it's important, once you've screwed things in place, check to make sure that things are engaging correctly, etc. So as you could see, I just checked then to make sure that it was engaging with the spring underneath and it would fly back when it was not in use, as it did. So next I'm gonna basically put the pallets back in. So I give them fixer drop treatment. That's so when I oil the exit fork, I obviously don't want the oil to run away on itself because it's quite tricky to do. I also remove any of the fixer drop from the pivots on the pallet forks as well. That's also really important. A lot of people don't do it, but I do it because I was told to do it. And the reason being is it's just a case of just removing any unnecessary potential friction that you might get from that. So just making sure that it's engaged correctly, and then I can obviously screw it down. And I've given the ratchet wheel a wind with a screwdriver. You can do that because there's no crown in the watch yet. And then I can pop the balance back on. Happy to see that it fires up straight away, which is really nice. So with this one, I found it quite a loose one, so I had to hold it down with some pegwood because it was moving around quite a bit. Sometimes they have like little feet. This one doesn't for some reason, which is a bit weird considering that the barrel bridge did have feet. So now rebuilding up the automatic works. Again, like I mentioned before, I'm quite a big fan of this. It's quite a straightforward system. It was very easy to disassemble and easy to reassemble, and no big complications whatsoever, and it works really well. And then just putting on the bridge on top. Again, making sure that all the pivots are lined up. And then just hold that down with a little bit of pegwood. Make sure that your wheels are engaged, and then I can screw it down. So one question I wanted to ask you guys, at the beginning of this video, you saw that there was a little 18-second clip about coming up. Is this something that I should do on my videos in future? Because it didn't take very long to do. And I thought it's kind of like a nice little thing to do so that you have an idea of, hey, this is what's going to be in the video. Just a few short second clips. So maybe let me know in the comments if it's a good idea or not. And if it is, I will definitely pursue it further. Also, I might do them as little YouTube short videos as well. So popping in the automatic module now, and that wheel just slides underneath the ratchet wheel, as you can see. Now, because there's no crown, I don't want to just press this on. So what I do is with a screwdriver, I just apply a little bit of turn to the ratchet wheel so that everything engages, and then it just falls into place. And that's what I'm doing right now. Because if you force it, you can damage the pivots, and obviously you don't want to do that. So I like to just apply a little bit of wind, and it really does follow its natural curve with that, and it will every time just fall into place perfectly. The teeth will align themselves, and it just risks any kind of damage happening. Or from happening, should I say. You can tell it's late at night for me. Oh yeah, it is. So just screwing that down now. Held down with the two screws, and then I can just oil up the top of the automatic works, just using some 9010, and I'm using a little bit of 1300 where the rotor is going to go. Another thing as well when it comes to oiling, if you do use too much, don't just think to yourself, oh, I've used too much, it is what it is. No, clean it off with some Rodico. Rodico is amazing stuff. If you just get a bit of clean Rodico, you can clean up that excessive oil, and if need be, you can do it again. But yeah, I cannot stress that enough as well. You really don't need to use a lot of oil at all. If you use too much, it can actually make your watch run worse than it did before. So always make sure that you clean off any excess oil that you've used. Sometimes I do find that when I'm doing it on a YouTube video, I can over oil a little bit on certain parts. And the main reason is it's because of the angle of where the camera is and the angle of where I am. If I'm working on a watch and it's not being filmed, the way that I'm working is definitely very different. I feel that I have more control. I mean, you guys must know what I'm talking about. I mean, I'm not directly over it the way I'm looking now. I'm kind of a bit of an angle, and I have to be because I have a camera, and if I didn't, my head would basically just be in the shot, and you guys would just see my head, and you wouldn't see the watch, and that would not be fresh. Well, not for you guys anyway. So building up the keyless works, I've added in the yoke, and also adding in the yoke spring, and I'm adding also in the spring for this quick set date lever. Again, this is a really nice little date lever. You can quick set the date in the first crown position, and you can do it forward and backwards. So you don't have to keep going in one direction, you can do it both directions basically. So obviously you can go from 1 to 10, or you could go from 10 and then 9, 8, 7, so to speak. Just makes it a very quick set date feature. So the crown's in, and also the winding stem and the winding pinion and the sliding pinion. Everything's been greased. And now I can add in the yoke spring. Again, use some pegwood so it doesn't fly across the room, because you will not find them. I mean, sometimes you might, but you will be looking for quite a long time unless you're really lucky. And what I always do is, as well, as I keep my hand holding it down even when I've got it engaged, and then while I'm in that position, I will draw my oiler with some oil across it so that I'm lubricating it at the same time. So just checking that it's engaged, that the setting lever spring's engaging correctly, and then I can screw that in place. Make sure to clean off excess oil. As you can see, there's excess grease there. So again, some Rodico will take care of that really easily. And like I said, there's no problem with using too much, just as long as you basically remove it. So I've added the cannon pinion actually. I realized that it's not in the shot, but it is just around, it's just below the minute wheel that I just added before. It's a very small cannon pinion, like I said, very tricky. I couldn't seem to get it off from the dial side. And because it's friction fit, you basically can I just put it on with a stake set, just a quick tap and it was on. But I'm not a fan of the system. I know I've worked on Zodiac watches before, and they also have it on the third wheel, and I'm not a fan. No sir, I'm not. Don't like it. I like the traditional method with it being in the center. I just find it a lot easier to deal with. So just popping on the hour wheel. Date wheels have been put on as well, as you can see, just to the left of the crown wheel. And then I'm just making sure that everything's engaged. All the teeth are lined up. So now the jumper lever and the jumper spring for the date disc. And it's a really nice date disc as well. It's not in white. It looks like it's in white, but I assure you it's silver with black numbers. So something a little bit different. I do have an Enica as well, which has a silver date disc, and it's something that you don't see often. Just something that's a little bit different and a nice change. So the date disc is on. I'm just making sure that that's lined up. And then what I'm doing now is I'm just putting this jumper spring on as well. Can be a little bit fiddly, because it's quite a bendy spring, and you have to be careful as well, because obviously it could fly off because it's relying on the weight from the date wheel as well for it to stay put, because obviously I've not secured everything down yet. Also oiling it as well with some 1300. Definitely a two-handed job. Perfect. So on goes the plate on top as well, which will secure everything together, held down with 3 screws as well. And as well, getting back to that cannon pinion, what I also noticed as well, it's interesting when you watch back and you see things like this, because obviously I'm doing a voiceover for the video. And I can see, as you can see with that plate, the cannon pinion is visible with a hole, and I'm just wondering if there is an additional tool to get that out. Maybe there was a special tool from Omega for these, I'm not sure. If you guys know, let me know, because I'm not that familiar with that. Let me know in the comments, because I'm thinking now that there's probably a special remover tool that is small enough to get in that hole, because why would there be a hole, you know what I mean? Everything's there for a reason. So putting on this beautiful sunburst chocolate dial, oh man, it's so nice, this dial, very, very 70s looking. Interesting as well, this watch dates from 1973, and the owner of this watch, they bought this from the dealer in 1975. So for 2 years, potentially, maybe, it was in the dealership, we don't know. So just dabbing off any excess dust, with some clean Rodico. And I have to say, I'm in love with that dial, it's so nice. So let's refit the hands. First the hour hand. Make sure that you've obviously set your date correctly to midnight. And then I can pop that on and then I can press it down with this hand press tool. On goes the minute hand as well. And again, making sure that it's lined up and that it snaps over correctly. And now I can just put on the seconds hand. There is a little bit of paint missing on that sweeper as well, which is a bit of a shame. But overall, it is a beautiful watch. And like I said, it's got a hack, so obviously when you push the crown back in, the watch will fire up. So just giving it a quick blow before we case it back up. Make sure there's no dust on there, and also blowing on the inside of the case as well, and then we can just pop on the case. With the nice, freshly restored crystal, also the case being brushed up nicely as well, just gives it an extra shine. I wouldn't even call it a polish, basically. I would just call it a buffing. Let's call it a buffing. A buffing up. So just fighting with the winding stem, of course, trying to get it in the case and get it lined up. And once you get it in, you can push it in as far as you can, and then you will have to push down the setting lever screw in order to push the rest of it in. On any key, you don't need to do that. You can actually just push it all the way and it'll click back in. But with the Omega ones, it doesn't work like that. You have to press the pusher down. So just put it in the movement clamp screws, one on each side, and they just fit snugly to the side of the case clamp, and then you can screw those down. It just saves the movement from wobbling around. Add in some oil, a little bit of 1300 for where the rotor is going to go, and the wheel for that as well, because I still have to add a couple of those on. It's like a three-piece set, so first that wheel goes on, then the rotor goes on, which has a post built onto it, and then it has a cap that goes over the top of the first wheel that you put in, and then it all screws in together and holds it in place. So we're really getting close to the end of this rebuild of this watch now. So obviously it's going to have a new gasket put into this. So you want to basically lubricate the new gasket. It's a lot easier to apply it. This one goes on the back of the case back rather than on the case itself. Actually easier to fit in my opinion. And then the case back simply screws back on. I use a ball for this. Minimizes scratches, minimizes risk. And last but not least, we have to check it on the Timergrapher with the lift angle correctly set to 50 degrees. And as you can see, we've got an amplitude up in the high 250, 260 area, and I'm more than happy with that. And there we have it, guys. Look at the case. I'm super happy with how this has turned out. The bracelet looks nice, the case back looks nice, the dial looks epic, and I'm really happy with how this came out overall. The Omega 166.0168, caliber 1012, it's full stainless steel, 36mm. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, please hit a like on this. It will immensely help me with the algorithm with YouTube. And of course, and as always, guys, until next time.